In this video, I want to cover the maintenance on this Agilent roughing pump. This Pfeiffer pump is the MVP 0703. The purpose of this pump is to establish a weak vacuum so that your turbo pump that sits at the mass spec is going to be able to establish a stronger vacuum. And that turbo pump has to spin up really fast, but if this doesn't first establish a weak vacuum, it's hard for the turbo to do that. This particular maintenance, we're going to be changing out the diaphragms and the valves and the O-rings. This right here is an exploded view of your pump. So more or less, we're going to take out the screws of this housing cover, which is going to reveal these circular discs, these head covers. If your maintenance is very overdue, you likely have some sort of rip or tear in the rubber of the diaphragm, and a lot of that rubber sort of fuses the head cover to like the housing of the pump, and it's really hard to dislodge. You might also see rips, tears, or even if you have a Tygon tubing on the outlet of your turbo pump, that Tygon tubing is probably contaminated with some of that broken down rubber. You'd be able to see that. All right, so once we've taken off this cover and we've dislodged these head covers, our next job is to take out the valves, and then we need to get to the diaphragm, which is a little bit tricky. You're going to need this tool to do that. So the idea of this tool is this rubber part here is where you're going to get most of your friction to be able to turn it. So this rubber part pushes up against 5, the clamping discs, so this like silver domed portion here. These diaphragms kind of clip under these little grooves or into these little grooves of the tool, and then the flat part at the bottom goes right here on the support disc, this sort of like geometric flat-sided disc right here to turn it. It's recommended that you do these one at a time. The reason for that is the orientation of each one of these discs matters. On the G side, the H side, the two different sides of this pump, and so does the orientation of those valves up there. So do them one at a time, or at least if you're not, make sure you're taking photos of each side that you're doing this on. All right, in terms of the tools we're gonna need, so I've got an electric screwdriver just to kind of speed things up. This particular one goes to about 6 Newton meters of torque, which is convenient because this tool right here needs 6 Newton meters of torque when you're putting the diaphragms back in. The other torque setting that you're gonna need for your torque wrench is going to be 12 Newton meters of torque. The bits that you're going to need to attach to your torque wrench are an H5 and an H6. So this H5 is going to help unscrew the housing cover screws, whereas your H6 is going to go into the back of this specialized tool. On top of that, here's what your diaphragms are going to look like when they come out of the box. It does matter which orientation you put them in there, and you're going to need 2 of these kits, so 8 separate rubber diaphragms total. When I take them out of the box from new, you'll notice that one side is going to be this kind of clear glossy side, and then you have a matte finish side. The clear glossy side has some text on it, and that text needs to face out. So basically when I'm putting a new diaphragm in, I want the 2 matte sides to touch each other, so that the text side is out whenever they get clamped in. On top of that, you might not be able to see this on camera, but this is supposed to be a square. And in fact, you can see the perforated line that's going around the circle that needs to be that square post. That fits perfectly inside a square that's on the bottom side of this diaphragm clamping disc, this 5 right here, the dome. And if it doesn't, it won't give you the seal that you need. So I've had to take an X-Acto knife and kind of carve out this square just perfectly. It's perforated, but I wasn't able to just rip them out by hand before when I did this. All right, that should be all your pieces. Let's go ahead and get started on taking this thing apart. The first part that I'm going to take apart is going to be the housing cover. So let me clear up a little bit of space here. To do that, we're going to need the H5 bit. I'm going to go ahead and get my screwdriver set up. just breaking the tension on them right now. These are tied in a little bit tighter at 12 Newton meters, whereas the tool that I have, the smaller electric wrench, only is able to go to about 6 Newton meters of torque. So now that they're all loose, I should be able to quickly hit them all with this tool. All right, let's put these to the side. This part coming off is a little bit difficult. There we go, not too bad. So you might want to take note of how these valves are placed onto this, and there's two separate sides to this that needs to be assembled. You'll notice this is the H side, so here's a good photo of the H side. Valves pointing this way away from handle, this way on handle, so it'll clamp over top, back down this way. Another issue you might run into is these covers sort of fuse themselves to the housing beneath, and it's a little bit difficult to dislodge them. This metal is not particularly hard, so you don't want to put anything sharp whenever you're trying to dislodge it, but you do need to kind of break the tension. And the more rubber degradation you have, the more that rubber is fusing to this material and not allowing it to pop back up. So I might have to use a flathead screwdriver. I would kind of wedge it right about here so that it gets a little bit of push to knocking this part out. Let me get that set up. To loosen up this head cover, I basically grabbed my flathead screwdriver, I grabbed my hammer, and I was able to kind of tap it onto the back right here just to break that tension, and now it's able to lift up. This one over here, still incredibly tight to the surface, and I don't even have that much degradation on this or that much fusing compared to the ones y'all might see. So you need some way to just tap it slightly loose to get it to do that. I can lift this up, drop off the O-rings and the valves. Might be just replacing these with the same ones there. Can use a needle nose plier, might help. And I want to be able to get to my specialized tool underneath this diaphragm to be able to unscrew this. So just getting around here. Pop this up, kind of lift it all the way around. Now kind of grab both sides and wedge them up. That allows me to get the disc, the tool around it, pushing down. Now just apply some downward force to get the tension. Rubber disc makes contact with the metal surface. I got enough friction to just unscrew this right here. I'll link the manual with that exploded view in it, but below here is a disc. You don't want that to drop on the inside, or you don't want to lose this disc. You want to make sure they all get put back into place as you took them out. The next job that's going to be a little bit tough is going to be removing, especially if you've got a lot of friction built up, can be removing the sort of sandwiched portion apart from each other, because both of these metal pieces, this metal piece and this metal piece, is fused to the diaphragm as well. If you've got something kind of round, so roughly a little bit larger than the diaphragm disc in between, you can kind of put it over top that circle, and then you can tap this post so that it comes out the other side. I have a chain clamp that works just perfect for that. I'll go grab it. Now to remove the diaphragm from the clamping disc and the support disc, I grabbed the chain clamp, which works nicely since it just happens to be wider than the disc on the inside to allow me to push this post through. But anything of roughly that diameter should work. I've never tried it on duct tape before, but I think that's probably more available to people. So I'm just trying to get enough friction here, and then I'm going to hit this to push it all the way through. There you are. Now I can pull these apart. And so comparing this to the disc that we had, ours just had the circle and the perforation. This is what it looks like completely cut out. And you'll notice that it matches up nicely with the square on this clamping disc right here. So when you put it all back in together, this needs to sit flush. And then backwards here. This needs to sit flush as well. And they should be roughly locked together so that the square is kind of keying it all into place. From here, you can just grab your new diaphragms. Note that there's 2 on each side. If I peel these apart, matte on inside, shiny on outside, and have those pushed into place. Reassembling this and putting it back into the machine can be a little bit tough, mostly because this disc wants to slide around and these reciprocate up and down, and they also wobble back and forth. So it's a bit hard to get this into place. To me, it helps to have everything assembled onto your specialized tool so you don't drop it. So let me sandwich it. Push it in, get that locked into place nicely. Roughly locked into place. Center this, and I'm going straight down, and I'm just doing some light turns to get it back on at the start. I'm gonna get this about hand tight first. Looks like it's grabbed on. It's about hand tight now. We can adjust our torque wrench to about 6 Newton meters. Now to get everything tightened and put back together, I've got my H6 bit, I've got my torque wrench dialed to 6 Newton meters, and I'm gonna see how far we have to go for that. It doesn't take a lot. Hand tight's gonna get you pretty close to 6. And as soon as I'm gonna hear that click, is when I'm gonna try and stop. I'm making sure not to put any extra force on the parts that I'm turning. I want all the force to be coming through the torque wrench. I'm hearing that click right now, so we should be good. Another thing that can go wrong on this, if these edges are touching sort of the edge of that circle on the housing, you get some friction and push back on there. If it's not a little bit past hand tight, or depending on how strong you are, basically hand tight, then you're probably getting some friction losses from like the housing cover or from the wrench or from touching it somehow. So, got my diaphragm back in. Now to put everything else back in. You'd have your new valve covers. Make sure that you're putting this in the same direction you took it out. So in this case, you've got the bean-shaped hole and then the circle. When I'm putting these over top, O-ring on the outside, there's a nice little flush spot for it. Secondary O-ring. Should be able to nest nicely in there if they haven't expanded or warped in some way. And then for these valve covers, they should also be able to sit somewhat nicely. So these go from like bean, they're pointing, bean to circle, pointing in the same direction here. When I'm putting back on my H cover, this post needs to be connected. I'm going to connect him first, kind of lock him into place going down that way, and I'm going to push it, sandwich it over top. Make sure that you're going relatively straight down on this. You don't want to move any of the valves that are just kind of sitting in place whenever you push it all the way down. So straight down. If it feels like this cover isn't sitting flush, it's because it's keyed relative to certain discs. So you have a mark right there, like an indent right there, that lines up with this indent right here. Then I have a separate indent on this side that's meant to line up as well. So let me do that one more time. Valve covers this way. Valve covers this way, sitting flush. Over top, straight down, and it should sit nice and flush when we go down. Very good. Now for the last part, I need to get these tight. So they need to go to 12 Newton meters, but we can get them partially tight, just at 6 Newton meters, which is what this tool goes to. Now that everything's screwed back into place, this should be good to go. You'd obviously need to be doing the other 3 diaphragms as well if you're changing them all out. That should be it. If you have any questions, you can give me a call.